My name is Fraser Stewart. I come from Scotland in the UK, and I'm an English teacher.
What's the main reason why you choose to come to Taiwan?
So that's quite a long story. So when I was growing up, I used to love like Asian culture, not just Chinese, but Asian culture in general. Like I studied karate when I was growing up. I used to like Japanese things, and I used to watch a Chinese cartoon. In Chinese it's called Noja Naohai, but in English it's called Noja Fights the Dragon King. And I just found it fascinating, and I'd always kind of wanted to learn Chinese, but I never really kind of had the motivation to do it. And then I married a Chinese woman in 2007, and we went to visit her family in China in 2008, just before the Beijing Olympics. And at that time, I couldn't speak Chinese at all, like no Chinese, and her family couldn't speak any English. So that kind of inspired me to start learning Chinese. But later we broke up. But I just found it so interesting that I wanted to continue studying. So I moved to Shanghai and studied Chinese for a year in Shanghai. And I liked a lot of things about Shanghai. There was a lot of things I liked, but there was some things I didn't like. And people said, you should try Taiwan because Taiwan's really nice. So I went. So I came to Taiwan in 2010 for the first time, and I just kind of fell in love with the place. I thought it was just fantastic, but kind of circumstances kind of conspired against me, and I got a job as a patent examiner in the UK about 2014. It's a government job. It's got a great pension, so I thought I'll do that till I retire, and then I'll come back and live in Taiwan after I retire and retire in Taiwan. But after about 8 years of doing that, I was kind of bored with it, so I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to come to Taiwan for a long time. I used to come to Taiwan every year for holidays and stuff. And I thought I enjoyed teaching. I quite like languages, so why not try coming to Taiwan to be an English teacher? So that's kind of how I ended up.
Living in China and being from the UK and now in Taiwan, what stands out the most about Taiwan?
The way I'd kind of describe Taiwan is it feels like you're in a video game. So there's one thing I remember is I used to play, there's a series of video games on PlayStation and PC, it's called Yakuza, and there's another game, it's called Shenmue, and I remember just after I'd been to Taiwan the first time, and I was in the UK and I was feeling a bit bored, depressed, and my friend gave me his Dreamcast and asked me to play Shenmue. And I started playing it, and I thought, oh my god, this is fantastic. It feels just like being in Taiwan again. Taiwan feels like a kind of a big mix of kind of Asian cultures. You've got like a strong Chinese culture, obviously, and then you've got kind of like the Japanese element to it. It feels a lot like, it feels very Japanese, but everyone's speaking Chinese, not Japanese. And the Chinese population's massive, and China is just crowded. It's crazy just how many people there are sometimes when you're in China. So.
During your stay here, what do you find hard to adjust to?
Well, there's two things. One is the obvious, is the driving, the traffic, because it's a lot. Say it's not as safe as driving in the UK or traffic in the UK. The other thing is you always feel like a foreigner in Taiwan. I think that's kind of the hardest thing for me, is that no matter where you go, people or what you do or how hard you try, you always feel like you're a foreigner here. Like people. Will always, when they see your face, all they see is foreigner, and that's quite difficult to kind of, because I want to be kind of part of Taiwan. I want to integrate to Taiwanese society, but they will always see me as a white man and a foreigner, and they'll never and an outsider. They'll never see me as kind of part of the country.
What is the most difficult challenge that you've overcome or yet to overcome?
I don't think I've really faced any very difficult challenges since I came to Taiwan, because I've got a lot of prior experience living in China. I've been to Taiwan before many times. Taiwan wasn't new to me when I came here, so there hasn't really been any challenges. I think the other thing is that when I came to Taiwan, I could already speak Chinese quite well. And it's gotten a lot better since I arrived. Just an example, like I tell people, like, oh yeah, I've got a credit card, and other foreigners will say to me, what? How did you get a credit card? And I say, I don't know, I just went into the bank and asked for one, and they gave me a credit card. So I think like for other foreigners, I think the thing that they find challenging is probably mainly due to language issues. But I never had that. And I already kind of knew a lot about Taiwan before I came here, so it was kind of very easy for me to just kind of do a lot of things that maybe would take other people a lot more time to adjust to.
What advice would you give to a first-time visitor in Taiwan?
I would start by telling them to be open-minded, because if you're from like a European country or a Western country, you're gonna see things and experience things that you wouldn't necessarily experience in your country. There's certain things people will do that are probably going to annoy you, but wouldn't annoy a local. Like if you're in a cubicle, a toilet cubicle. In the UK, at least, or in most countries, people will try the door, and if it's locked, they'll say, okay, there's someone in there, so then they'll just stand and wait. But in Taiwan, they'll start knocking on the door. And in the UK, at least, that sort of thing would be seen as very, very rude behavior. But in Taiwan, that's quite normal. So there's going to be like those kind of cultural conflicts, and I think it's important to approach that with an open mind. The other thing I would strongly recommend is to try and learn Chinese. It's really not as hard as people think it is. People really appreciate it if you actually make the effort and speak to them in Chinese. People really like that. If you go into like a 7-Eleven or a store or a restaurant or whatever, people start talking to you in English and you'll go, oh, that's great, and then you'll start speaking English back. But actually, it's much better if you try and talk to them in Chinese. Like they actually like that a lot more than if you just speak to them in English.
If you are to change anything in Taiwan, what would it be?
I would get rid of all the English on all the signs. I would stop all the bilingual stuff, and I would get people to insist that foreigners speak to them in Chinese and stop trying to cater to foreigners by speaking to them in English. Which might sound quite controversial, but the thing is, in other countries, if you go to France or Germany or other places in the world, people don't do that. There isn't this expectation that you would speak to foreigners in English, or that people will just automatically speak to you in English. Taiwanese people would say, oh, well, that's us being polite and helpful and trying to be helpful, but it's actually not, because it doesn't encourage people to actually integrate into society here. It stops people wanting to learn the language and learn the culture and getting to know the locals. So if people really just insisted that that they spoke to foreigners in Chinese, and that foreigners had to learn Chinese to live here and read signs and do basically anything, then it would actually help a lot with foreigners actually being able to mix with locals and have more cultural integration.
If you are to introduce any British culture to Taiwanese, what part of British culture would you introduce?
Pies. Definitely pies. One of the things I really, really miss about the UK are the pies. We really love pies. Pie and mash, pie and chips, like steak pie with gravy in it. Oh, and the other thing is Christmas dinner. I miss Christmas dinner like so much. So in the UK, one of the things we do is we get our families all come together on Christmas dinner, and we have like a roast bird of some kind. Usually it's chicken. Well, my family we have chicken. Other people have turkey, but that's really an American thing. Chicken is kind of our thing, and you get gravy with it, and roast potatoes, roast parsnips, carrots, and it just tastes, it's fantastic. Best meal of the year. So those two things would be pies and roast chicken dinner, Sunday roast. I was a math teacher in China, so I actually have a PhD in mathematics. And I taught maths at university in CN, which is where the Terracotta Warriors are, for a year as well. Yeah.
His Facebook link will be in the description below. You can go check him out. Can you give us a few differences into the working condition in China and Taiwan?
I haven't really noticed much difference, because my job was quite different between China and Taiwan. But One thing about China is the bureaucracy is significantly worse. Like a lot of foreigners might complain about the bureaucracy in Taiwan, but no, China, much worse in terms of bureaucracy. As an example, I used to, when I went to my bank account in China, I used to pay cash in my bank account, right? Give them money. So in Taiwan, you can just do that in a 7-Eleven, put cash in your bank account, right? That easy. But in China, I had to fill in 5 different forms of information and then wait 5 days for the money to clear before I could use it. Just cash, not a check, I mean actual money. In terms of working, there's a lot more politics involved, a lot more office politics. You are a lot more subservient to your boss. They don't really like complaints of any kind. The other thing is the working hours are longer, even for foreigners. They're longer in China than they are in Taiwan. So I used to work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is like about 2 hours more in China compared to Taiwan. You don't have the same access to resources because the internet's heavily censored. It's a totally different experience. Taiwan feels a bit more like modern, if that makes sense, a bit more kind of Western working conditions, whereas in China it still feels like really like they want you to work very long hours for very little money. Although this was like 11 years ago, I think it's quite different now.
Do you have anything else to tell Taiwanese people?
Yeah, I think I like it if Taiwanese people treat foreigners like Taiwanese people. I find it more welcoming if I get treated like a Taiwanese person, personally. You know, like we're all treated exactly the same. That's what that would be my dream, is that they treat foreigners exactly the same way they treat Taiwanese people.
How is it like living in Taiwan in general as a foreigner?
I personally have found it pretty easy. I've found it pretty straightforward. I'm probably a bit different to most other foreigners because I'm not really the type that likes going to bars and drinking heavily or going out to the movies or these types of things. And my lifestyle is pretty straightforward. I go to work and I come home and I relax, and then at the weekend I go to coffee shops and drink tea and, you know, go to the gym or try going to the gym, that sort of thing. So I found it very easy to just kind of, I find my life pretty easy and pretty straightforward in general.
未来的事情, what's your plan for the future?
我有一个金卡，so 这是你的工作金卡，so 这是特别的居留证，so 我的居留证从3年，我先可以住在台湾3年，然后我的3年之后我可以申请永远的居留证，so 我最近的计划，我想住在台湾到2026年，然后我想做什么，但是现在我没有计划回英国，所以我来台湾之前，我想一想，我也可以去日本，住在日本，因为日本也是非常好的国家，但是我觉得学日文不是太难，就是我觉得太累，因为我用非常多努力学中文，我也用非常多的时间学中文，所以我知道学一个语言用多少的努力有多少的时间，所以我不想再做一遍学另外一个语言，所以我觉得来台湾因为我来台湾我已经会学中文，所以我觉得就是比较容易的话，这是也为什么我想来台湾。
好，谢谢。
谢谢你。
Thank you very much, and hope you continue to enjoy your stay here in Taiwan. 感谢你们的支持，但是还有很多人还没订阅，请不要忘记订阅、按赞、开启小铃铛，你们的支持是我们的动力，谢谢大家。